So, Ferrari in 2020. To be honest, even hearing the word Ferrari in 2020 just brings about negativity. And let's be honest, in the context of Formula One, it's not been their greatest ever season. In fact, I think it's fair to say that in Ferrari's 70-year history in Formula One, this has been one of their worst seasons in the history of the sport. I mean, from the poor results on track to the really disappointing car that basically from day one during testing, we knew was going to be a bust in terms of fighting for the championship, which is what we hoped after 2019 when they had a little bit of a dip after a really good couple of years in 2017 and 2018, and then to all of their off-track antics as well, with dropping Sebastian Vettel and all of the negativity that created in terms of within Ferrari and within the media as well, and how the fans reacted to it. And now with all of the negativity going towards Matteo Binotto and the rest of the team as well, saying the word success and Ferrari in 2020 just does not sound right. However, although on the Formula One side it has been a dismal year for them, I have to admit that outside of Formula One, Ferrari are absolutely killing it right now and dominating the lower formulas with so many amazing drivers in their driver academy, to the point where I think it's very fair to say that I think we're entering a golden generation of Ferrari drivers. Now, whether or not that translates into world championships in Formula One in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that's a completely different conversation, which I will talk about in this video. But with all of the negativity around Ferrari, I did want to try and make a bit of a more positive video looking at Ferrari and looking at all of their dominant and successful drivers so far in the lower categories that could make their way into Formula One very, very soon, and maybe even one day be world champions at Ferrari. So let's take a look at the young drivers who are currently in the FDA, the Ferrari Driver Academy. And now I'm going to go series by series. And to be honest, the first person I want to mention is technically not part of the FDA anymore, because it is Charles Leclerc in Formula One. Now, I wanted to really quickly mention Charles because to all of these young drivers, I feel like he is the inspiration. He's someone to look up to in terms of where they want to be in the next few years. He was the guy, along with Jules Bianchi. I've also got to pay massive respects to Jules because Ferrari have never been historically a young driver team. They've never really had a great young driver academy. They've always heavily relied on using their history and using their heritage to attract the more seasoned and already accomplished drivers to come to Ferrari and win them titles. So certainly in the last 10 years, especially as I said with Charles and Jules, those two especially shine out as the first generation. Obviously, we never know what, Jules will be able to do. Maybe one day go to Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc on more than one occasion has said that he raced on for Jules almost to kind of complete the dream, and boy did he do that, going from GP2 in 2017, then graduating into Formula One, and then going into Ferrari a year later in 2019 and beating Sebastian Vettel at his own team when the car wasn't built around him, because that seems to be a massive argument as to why Seb is not doing so well in 2020. The car wasn't exactly built around Charles in 2019, and yet he still managed to come into the team and dethrone Seb in his first ever year. And let's be honest, it is Charles Leclerc that is the reason why Sebastian Vettel got kicked out, because Ferrari now are backing Charles Leclerc 100% with a long-term deal. And I feel like, again, he is the inspiration. He made it, he got there, and now it's just a case of giving him the right car to one day fight for world titles. But now let's go through all of the drivers in the Ferrari Driver Academy. And beginning with Formula 2, we have 5 drivers with Mick Schumacher, Callum Ilott, Robert Shwartzman, Marcus Armstrong, and Giuliano Alesi. In terms of Formula 3, Ferrari have just the one young driver in Enzo Fittipaldi, with another 2 drivers in the Formula Regional Championship with Joan-Luca Petikov and Arthur Leclerc, who of course is the brother of Charles Leclerc. And lastly, their youngest driver is racing in Italian Formula 4 at the age of 16, and his name is Dino Beganovic. Now, when you look at the standings in the lower formula, Ferrari are absolutely dominating 2 series at the moment, which is kind of strange. Obviously, as bad as they are doing in 2020 in Formula 1, they're almost doing equally as good in the lower formula with so many of their young drivers. In terms of Formula 2, currently in the top 5 at the moment with 4 races to go, we have 3 Ferrari young drivers in the top 5 still capable of winning the title, with Mick Schumacher, Callum Ilott and Robert Shwartzman. And for any anyone that's been watching Formula 2 this year, they will know that this year's field is just so high quality. It's not as if these Ferrari drivers are racing against really bad talents. There's so many great drivers from top to bottom, and it's been one of the most competitive and exciting Formula 2 seasons we've ever seen. I mean, there's so many great drivers, also from the other teams as well. We have the likes of Dan Ticktum from Williams, we have Guan Yu Zhou, and also Christian Lundgaard from Renault, and even Yuki Tsunoda from Red Bull, as well as even some seasoned vets in Formula 2 like Louis Delatraz as well. And yet, as I said, 3 of those 5 top drivers are in the Ferrari Driver Academy, with either Mick Schumacher or Callum Ilott at the moment looking like the favourites to take the title at the end of the season. And even when you look at the Formula Regional Championship, once again it is Ferrari domination, with both of their 2 drivers in first and second, with a pretty healthy margin back to third place. So once again Ferrari will probably be taking this series as well, with Juan-Luca Petikov in first and Arthur Leclerc in second. So although there won't be any championship success for Ferrari in Formula 1 in 2020, they're going to take some very big crowns and some very big amounts of silverware in the lower categories with lots of their young drivers. As far as the really young drivers, I think it's too early to judge whether or not they are F1 material, let alone potential future world champions. Even up to the likes of Juan-Luca Petikov and Arthur Leclerc, although they are 1 and 2 at the moment in the Euro Formula Regional Championship, it's in Formula 2 where the really great talents start to stand out above the rest. So although it will be great to see either of them win the regional Euro title this year, I think I'll hold off on any real judgment in calling any of them potential F1 drivers of the future for now. As far as the drivers who are currently racing in Formula 2, however, the guys who look like they can definitely make it into F1 and arguably deserve to be in Formula 1 are Mick Schumacher, Callum Ilott and Robert Shwartzman. Drivers like Giuliano Alesi and Marcus Armstrong I think maybe need a few more seasons in Formula 2 to potentially get into the conversation of being in F1, but I don't personally see them as being on the same level as the other 3. Now, Schumacher and Ilott are in a different situation compared to Robert Shwartzman because they're in their second season in F2, whilst Robert Shwartzman is in his rookie season. Unsurprisingly, it's Mick and Callum who are the most hotly tipped to jump into Formula 1 in 2021, as they are the most experienced and the more accomplished drivers in F2 so far, being 1 and 2 in the championship. But when asking the question of who stands out, I don't think that you can say without a shadow of a doubt that one of them is better than the other, especially between Mick and Callum. Both of them have had their highs and lows in the F2 season this year, and both are deserving of an F1 seat in my opinion. They are very similar drivers in a way, and to be successful in Formula 1, it's all about handling the pressure, staying consistent with the package that you are given, and being able to grab those odd results during those chaotic races that could potentially define your season. And when you look at that pressure aspect, both Mick and Callum had relatively mediocre first seasons in F2 last year, and it took them that one season to really embed themselves within the team, get used to the cars and the way the tyres work before they could really perform at their best. And this season they have clearly took a massive step up and have been the standouts throughout the entire season. However, the problem is that when you are in F1, you just can't have that slow first season, especially when there is so much competition from the other Ferrari drivers that are lower down and looking to get into Formula 1. So for Mick and Callum, if they do make it into F1 next year, it won't be a question of speed because both are really quick and both of them also seem very mature, which is extremely important when you're going into Formula 1. I think it will all come down to who will adapt best to F1 and their specific team. I'm going to make this prediction right now. If these two perform at their very best next year, do not be surprised if they each beat their more experienced teammate in their rookie season. They are just that good in my opinion. I think both of them at the very least have the potential to become a high quality midfield driver, capable of podiums and even wins like the likes of Pierre Gasly and maybe even a Sergio Perez. But as far as who is championship material, although it won't be talked about this way, I do think that in 2021, they're going to be in a battle against each other to show Ferrari that they are the better driver and who is more deserving of a potential call-up to Ferrari for the future. Now, in terms of Robert Shwartzman, I kind of left him till last because I've made my feelings towards him very clear on this channel before. Robert, to me, has more potential than either Mick Schumacher or Callum Ilott, in my opinion, to dominate F3 like he did, and then to come into F2 as a rookie up against one of the toughest grids we've ever seen, then to go on to get 3 race wins, lead the championship very early on, and yes, despite a few poor results as of late, still be in the top 5 and still be within a chance of winning the title. To me, it is a sign of someone who is very special. And although I do think that he will do another year in Formula 2 because there just aren't enough seats left in 2021, don't be surprised to see him in F1 in 2022, possibly alongside Mick Schumacher at Alfa Romeo, because I still think on potential alone, he is the standout driver in my opinion. Now, in a way, to have 2 or 3 great young drivers who are deserving of an F1 seat is a good problem to have for Ferrari. Red Bull, who of course are famed for their revolutionary young driver program, which has produced the likes of Vettel, Ricciardo and Verstappen, actually had a little bit of a problem a few years ago as they didn't really have a Red Bull Junior to promote to F1. And in the end, they actually had to ask Alexander Albon, who was on his way to Formula E and had been dropped by the Red Bull program, if he could come back and race at Toro Rosso for 2019. Even now, in a sense, Verstappen has turned out to be so good that Red Bull are still struggling to partner him up with anybody from the Red Bull family, because if they choose a driver like Perez or Hülkenberg to replace Albon for next season, then you just know the fans will begin to call into question the validity of the driver academy. However, when it comes to Ferrari, they have the driver talents, it's just a case of finding seats for them. Obviously, the other Ferrari-powered teams, Alfa Romeo and Haas, who are the favourites to take up Mick Schumacher and Callum Ilott respectively, do have seats that they can give, but unlike Red Bull, who have a purpose-built second team in AlphaTauri for their young drivers, Ferrari just don't have that, meaning that they're never 100% in control of those seats, which also means that if you have either a driver who is really struggling or an exceptional talent that just needs to be promoted as soon as possible, like Red Bull did of course with demoting Pierre Gasly in 2019 and promoting Max Verstappen in 2016, in Ferrari's case they just don't have that power. Now, one way of creating seats is to supply another team with a power unit in exchange to put one Ferrari driver in the team. But after 2020 and where they are now specifically with their power unit, it's going to be difficult for Ferrari to convince any of the other teams, let alone maybe a brand new team wanting to join Formula 1, to take a Ferrari power unit in exchange to also adding one Ferrari young driver to their team. So that is why in this hybrid era of Formula 1, a power unit is king, and a bad power unit for your main team isn't just bad in terms of competing against the likes of Mercedes and Renault, but it can also create bad consequences further down the grid, like a lack of options for seats for your young drivers, which seems to be the problem that Renault have with their driver academy right now. Another option for Ferrari, which I don't think should be discounted, is them buying out a team like Alfa Romeo in the future and making them a bona fide Ferrari-owned number 2 team. With where F1 is right now commercially, despite the incoming budget cap, teams like Alfa and even Haas, who also are an option for a buyout, they are struggling, and honestly, I don't think it's crazy to think that Ferrari could buy one of them out to give them more flexibility with drivers and potentially even more power in Formula 1. In the end, Ferrari need to be careful because in the palm of their hands, they have a golden generation of drivers who in the next 10-15 years could win them multiple world titles. But they need to make sure that they don't let these drivers go to waste by either not giving them a chance at the top team or even being too slow and not working hard enough to find seats for those drivers in F1 in the first place and leaving them in the lower formula for too long. Ferrari have done a great job in supporting these drivers both commercially, financially, and helping them climb up the ranks. In my opinion, they now have the best driver academy in F1, but it's what they do with these drivers and what they can go on to achieve for Ferrari that will really decide whether this golden generation will fulfill its potential or just become another story of what could have been. Well guys, there you go. That is my video on Ferrari's potential golden generation. Now, let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. I cannot wait to see what you guys think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are we entering a golden generation of Ferrari drivers? And also let me know, who do you think is that one guy? And I want one name of who is the absolute one that stands out above the rest as a future world champion in your opinion. Now guys, I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.